speak up, please? Can you speak up, please?
Sorry. One thing that really stands out to me about the piece here is that it almost feels like a summer vacation style piece, because you see everybody almost walking in the sky. And if you look at it for more than a few seconds, you notice that it's almost incorrect in that sense, because the reflections wouldn't be showing sky, they'd be showing the underside of the tarp. But the artist has chosen instead to make it look like they're walking on air. And it's got the inference there is almost a happiness, an idealism about the world.
The lightness of being.
That's right.
Yeah, it's very airy. Of course, unfortunately, this isn't something that we can necessarily replicate in writing. I mean, to talk about how they're walking on clouds would not make a whole lot of sense. It's difficult to convey that, but we could do other stuff. We could talk about we probably choose to talk about the fruit and the flowers. Maybe instead of the blind guy, we just talk about the clickety-clack of the stick and the confidence with which he's walking. I have no idea what this guy over here is doing, this mousy dude. But probably he's going to look at the fruit as well. And then we've got the young lovers over there, the broad, heavy-set guy, and the twinky, slim, probably bunny rabbit with the ears and everything. But yeah, we talk about the scene a little more literally. But by carefully selecting, and this is why I drew this image, carefully selecting which aspect of the scenes we actually want to talk about, we can manipulate the reader's emotion, because we ask for emotional and logical inference. We talk about the puddles to make them realize that it had just rained. We wouldn't even have to talk about rain. We can just give them that sensation of, the pleasant summer sun, and maybe the bit of humidity, maybe the bit of steam rising from the worn cobblestones. It's a very, very rich, detailed environment, and we can do a whole lot with it. So when we're writing, when we're defining a story like this, our first instinct is to find the key points of information that we want to convey. How do we most quickly convey that they're in a market and it has just rained? And you can do this in one paragraph. You can just define it completely. You can also take a step back and look at pardon me, that was a little bit. You can look at the elements of this environment that actually make the experience. And this is one of the reasons why people always say, write what you know, right? Write what you know. When you want to write about a marketplace, go out and see a marketplace. And it's not just so that you can find all the continuity and all the veracity and all the proper details. What makes a marketplace? How do real market stall owners mark up their prices, and how do people move? It's not just about that. It's what are the key aspects that make the experience what it is for you. And that's something very personal. It's something that takes time to learn. But the first step is to be aware of it. When you're walking around an environment, we can do it today. When you're walking around the lobby, I actually invite you to just stand like an idiot and kind of look around, ignoring people who are talking to you or brushing past you or telling you that you have to move, otherwise you'll be evicted. And just try to experience it and try to define for yourself what it is that's making you feel the way you feel at the moment. Maybe you're feeling a little lonely because you don't know anybody around, or specifically because by some coincidence everybody around you is facing away from you. And it could be a pure coincidence, but you notice these things, and they're a powerful experience for you. They're going to be a powerful experience for your reader. So, I mean, if they share your emotional frame. So, okay, we've got another couple of examples. Now, this is one where I want to talk about inference. Do we all know who this dashing fellow is supposed to be? And I'm not going to do the thing, no, it is a drawing of, no, it is Han Solo, the dashing rogue, the Aragorn of Star Wars. I've always found his choice of costume, and it's a bit difficult to see here, but the costume choices for this guy, I've always found them fantastic. Because the other characters in Star Wars, they're all, I mean, the designs are fantastic, even though sometimes the script and the acting is not really as up to par, especially in the more recent prequels. But okay, they're still cool movies. But the character design was always fantastic. But this guy always stood out. I mean, look at what he's wearing. He's got a actually pretty nice shirt, which he wears open. There's no buttons on there. But he's also wearing a vest. You can't see it quite very well, but he has a couple of pockets on there. and he wears a low slung belt with a holster on it. It's a really simple bit of attire, but it tells you a whole lot about who he is and what he means in the story. The fact that he's wearing a vest, vests are cool. Having them closed is really uptight. Having a vest tightly buttoned up, instantly you're uptight. Whereas if you have it open, you still have the suggestion, and this is juxtaposition, something we was also talking about. So you have a very formal item of clothing that is being worn in a very informal way. This contrast actually makes him a little bit more devil-may-care. He becomes a rebel by endowing him with something that should be very square, very uptight, and sort of, disrespecting it, inverting it. So I thought that was always a really, really great choice for his costume, to tell you just instantly who he is when he's sitting there in the cantina, just leaning back, and all his clothes are rumpled. And they're really nice clothes. I mean, they're, the fabrics were really good. And he's just sitting there super casual. And you know that he's super casual because he's just a few buttons away from being really uptight. You see what I'm talking about here? I mean, it's a little bit of a vague thing, and this image doesn't really convey it as much. Can anyone else think of an example of a character that we may be familiar with, where through the choice of clothes, the choice of attire, the choice of outfit, we get a real instant emotional sense of who they are?
Jack Sparrow.
Jack Sparrow. Oh my God. That's a great example, actually. I should have put him up here. Captain Jack Sparrow, he's covered in so many, there's so much to look at when he walks into a scene. Everything's jingling, everything's, and you instantly know what his story is, or well, that there are a whole lot of stories. He's carrying so many trophies of his previous adventures and experiences, braids here, beads there. There's just this mishmash of artifacts. Thank you very much for that example. Candy over there, please. You know that this is a guy who's had a lot of adventures. Is that something, though, that we could do in a story?
You get laborious, you get a very long description, and it's boring.
That is true, isn't it?
Like if you're trying to draw a brick wall and you just...
You can drip feed these things in at certain points in the story.
You can.
You don't have to mention every single bit of attire he's wearing, for example.
You certainly wouldn't do it at the start.
Well, on the other hand, how would you feel as a reader if the relevant, the aspect of the person's appearance that is relevant at a particular moment only becomes mentioned at that moment, right? So it's only, he has, he has a hairpin, which hasn't been mentioned until he needs to pick a lock. As a reader, would you feel that that's fair?
No, it seems to have been pulled out of nowhere.
It might. Even though we were actually trying to save them from this huge long list of things that they're wearing, it's actually kind of a tricky thing to manage. We probably have to stick to something a little bit more simple to restrain our desire to heap fantastic artifacts. He has a scar here, there, and he got wings, and one of them's missing 2 feathers. Some of the. No offense to anyone in here that has a really. Okay, yes, somebody wants candy.
Isn't that what planning is for?
Isn't that what planning is for?
Yeah.
Oh, well. Now we're talking about something that's a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
Planning is a huge subject. We can talk about that as well. But yeah, okay, fair. If we're talking about this particular example about someone wearing a very elaborate costume, then yeah, this would be a situation where you think beforehand, what are you going to do with it? Is it going to be relevant? And how much are you going to reveal? Because as was said, if you were to describe Jack Sparrow's attire in complete detail, every aspect, every bead and braid that he's wearing, you'd be at it forever. It'd be like an Oscar Wilde novel. You can spend 4 or 5 pages. Hello, welcome.
Can't you do it with assumption as well? For example, if you're at a dinner party, for example, you can assume that there will be...
If you're at a dinner party, you can assume that someone's wearing. Well, you can say someone is dressed in white tie or black tie attire.
And then obviously later on, they button up their coat, for example. And then again, that can be used to convey a particular emotional angle.
But it's also a point of boiling down somebody's appearance to not just the important parts, but using your reader's imagination to your own benefit. For example, if you're going to explain Han Solo, you don't always need to say he had a very nice shirt and he was wearing a vest and he had a low slung holster. You could simply say something as short as he was a few buttons short of formal, and you might get a much better description in many fewer words.
Yep. And brevity is the soul of wit, and not just comedy. Let me see if I can put that. Well, actually, can you try to put what you just said into the framework of the icon, index, symbol?
It'll be somewhere between index and symbol, because you require the knowledge about the society and the knowledge of the world from which the character comes to understand the difference between someone who is perfectly formal and what it means to drop even just a couple of buttons and become much more casual. The difference there is startlingly different rather than just a little less formal.
We all happy with that? I think it's a very good description.